One thing I missed that you did not mention, is there a schedule in place for spraying mosquitoes, especially the breeding of mosquitoes? You said you did a field trip and there are a number of mosquito breeding sites. Do you have a schedule in place? And when would this spraying start?
CPS for sure has a plan for spraying. There are a couple issues surrounding that they're looking at what insecticides to use because some mosquitoes have become more resilient to some of the pesticides that have been used. So they are doing that. They have 2 new fogging units, but also addressing the breeding grounds is critical because with the fogging, they really just drive through the neighborhood and just fog all over. But if you're not addressing the breeding grounds, it's an issue. Also remember that when you fog, you're tackling the adult mosquitoes, the ones that are already flying. You're not tackling the larvae. So then you'll have to spray constantly on cycles. And so it is definitely a 2-pronged approach, but I'll make sure that the CPS comes out with what their spraying schedule is so that the consumers are aware, the public's aware.
Thank you, Minister Lee. Now I go over to the former Minister of Justice, since we only got our new minister yesterday. Minister Gibson, 2 weeks ago, you made a statement and you said you were going to meet with the unreachable chief prosecutor on St. Martin, Mr. Tunman, who made some very disturbing statements in the IPCO meeting regarding numbers, the amount of prostitutes we have on St. Martin, undocumented citizens. I would like to know if you met with this person, did he provide you the statistics that he used to make the IPCO presentation? Because I asked for that statistics and I can't get it. And may I remind you, Minister Gibson, that within the past 5 years, there were only 3 boats caught, stopped, and the persons were prosecuted for transporting illegals from St. Martin to other destinations. So did you get those information for me, please?
Good morning, Bibi, and thank you for your question. Yes, I indeed, as I mentioned, I would meet with head prosecutor, Mr. Tom Mann, and discuss the the issues raised by you with him. Starting with the last one first, he provided me with what he had said at the IPCO meeting, what he documented, he showed me, and somehow between what he said and what reached the press, or what the press wrote, there was a difference. What the document showed that he said that he was involved in 3 cases, including Haitians, on boats leaving the island. He did not say that 3 times a week Haitian leaves in boats. He showed me that, provided that evidence, and I accepted that. So somehow it was taken out of context. Relative to the prostitution statement made by him, he showed me where he had said that no one can really determine, there are no statistics, exactly what the real situation is. But he did say that yes, if you make the comparison in terms of inhabitants of St. Martin with inhabitants of Amsterdam, that it's almost the same or more. And I pointed out to him that you really have to look at it in terms of it's not only the inhabitants of St. Martin you should compare, but the entire market, including the tourist market. And his response to that was, well, the inhabitants in Amsterdam, he did not include the tourists in the numbers for Amsterdam. He just included the number of the population of Amsterdam. So if you're going to compare apples and pears, if you only want to compare population with population, you can't then make an argument about population without the tourist population. And if you do that, then the actual comparison comes out the same way if you also include the tourist population of Amsterdam. I told him, I said, we're a family. And no family wants their dirty linens hanging out in public. And from that point of view, it ought not to have been said.
Is that it?
Doesn't that answer your questions, Vivi? Those are two questions you asked me.
I'll make a statement before I make my third question. Are you sure you got the real statement or you got a doctored statement? Because I asked for the statement the very day, and he refused to make that statement public. Did he have to doctor it? I don't know. But I'll leave that for you to think about. And I go now to Minister Arundel. Welcome after a long time, and Happy New Year to you. You gave a lot of information on marketing the island, tourism, the GDP, et cetera, but there's one story, part that I didn't hear from you. What's the status of the Princess Juliana International Airport? The director has been suspended. I understood that there are some kind of agreement being worked out with the PJIE and the former director who is now suspended, Regina Labega. Has there been an agreement reached? And what about the CLA and the board of PJIE, both management and operational? Are they cooperating with the minister?
Well, with regard to the managing director, Mr. General Vega, I already made a statement, I think, to Mr. Dick. Mr. General Vega took leave of absence, and the absence was granted by the operational company, which is her employer, awaiting the decision of her appeal. The leave of absence is until June 30th, 2016. That is the same period that her contract expired. So during that period, we are going to discuss the situation and see how best to solve this problem. Because actually, after June 30th, she'll be out of a job. But she is waiting the appeals case decision, their decision on that, which will have no impact on the situation. However, we are awaiting that decision, and once the decision has been taken, we will take further actions. With regards to the supervisory board, you said they're not cooperating.
I ask if they are.
If they are, I did not receive any resistance from them. I sat with them, and they did cooperate in granting Ms. Labega the request, the leave of absence, so therefore they are cooperating. However, maybe there are other situations that I am not familiar with, but they did not, I was not privy to that type of situation as yet. Presently, I'm dealing with the Regina Labega situation in her request for the leave of absence, and that request was granted by the operating company. With regards to the personnel and their strike, I received a letter from them requesting a meeting. However, we told them that they have to sit with the, I think it was the Labor Department and the mediator to solve the problem. However, I did not receive any feedback or answer for them. I will have to look into that situation again.
Thank you, Mr. Minister Arundel. I'll come back in my second round.
Thank you, Bibi. Any further questions from the media? Yeah. Hilbert?
Thank you. Good morning, Minister Arundel. You spoke about revenue-generating measures, but I'd like to bring to your attention that sometimes there's money leaking from government-owned companies as well. And the example is at the harbor, where Mr. Brian Deere brought to my attention that in November 2012, the harbor decided to buy a piece of Bobby's Marina, while in January 2013, Bobby's Marina was trying to get a deed for the property that the harbor was going to buy from him. In other words, the property already belonged to the government, and after Bobby's Marina got the deed, the port bought it from him. So that way, $4.75 million went out of the harbor to private company. Does that situation have your attention? Are you looking into that?
Actually, that's a situation that has been dealt with the legal persons, the harbor, and I was briefly informed, but due to the fact that the situation is still pending, I did not really went into it in details, but definitely I will have to look into it and see why it occurred and see how best
Yeah,
to
because
get
I
it
even
resolved.
saw email correspondence from a department of your colleague minister Myers that said, why do I have to give this guy the deed for something that we know we're going to buy back already?
Mhm.
It's kind of an awkward situation, I find.
Yeah, there's something I have to look into that situation
Yeah.
because I'm not too familiar with it. I was
Oh.
briefly updated, but I will look into it.
Okay, thank you. Another question to Minister Lee that has to do with prostitution on the island. The former Minister of Justice has said that there will be no more permits for girls coming to the island until the sector has sorted out its problems. Now, of course, the Justice Ministry deals with the residence permits, and your ministry deals with the work permits. So my question is: is there also like a moratorium on work permits for women coming to work in these places?
In my discussions with the Council of Ministers, and based on the ruling on the Casablanca case, I understand that the ministry is not to issue any more permits for Anamir Macias. And so I understand that the solution is for dancers, yeah. And so the solution is that they would be actually going to economic affairs to get some sort of a different economic business license and not a work permit. So for the moment, VSA is not issuing any more work permits based on that court order.
Oh, yeah, but I understood that depends on the sector repairing their ills. What has to happen to change the situation?
I think the Minister of Justice could probably explain better, but
Mhm.
it will no longer be a work permit issued to the establishment,
Mhm,
but
yeah.
rather some sort of a permission issued directly to the women. So it wouldn't be a work permit. So that's why I'm saying Justice probably could answer you better, but it will not be a work permit issued
Okay.
to the establishments.
All right, thank you. Would you further explain on that, Minister Gibson?
Yes. The issue is quite simple in terms of what policy we should apply. The court has rendered a decision that, based on international law, that the government could be held as a conspirator in committing a crime as far as human slavery is concerned. With that decision, automatically and immediately, I issued the instruction not to give any more residency permits upon the request of these clubs. And we held meeting with the Labor Department, the Minister of VSA also, to bring this to his attention, and also to request that no more work permits be issued to clubs. The permits will be issued to an entrepreneur who has to file for a independent entrepreneur license from the Department of Economic Affairs. And that entrepreneur can then establish their business with the clubs by making an agreement with them or anybody else. The policy is not temporary, it's permanent, but methods are being worked out further to come to a better regulated way of having the industry operate and different to how it operated before.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew?
Yes, good morning to the Council of Ministers. Minister Lee, 23 workers were laid off from Atlantis, well, Stars Casino now. That happened last night. Are you aware of the situation?
So far, no. I haven't heard about it. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to even look at the papers as yet.
Okay. Also, Minister, I think I could go to Minister Arinel.
Can I interject there just to make certain that we have a balanced report on that? Your paper reports that the managing director said that they had not been laid off. So that answer you already had. So leaving hanging that 23 people have been laid off is not fair unless you say the other side also.
Okay, well, the workers are the one that came to the paper and made the statement, so I'm just going on. They said they were going to the minister this morning. That's the only reason why.
Yeah, but your paper also reported that they spoke to Mr. Giuseppe,
Yes,
the managing director,
that's
who
correct.
told your paper they had not been laid off. So you
Yes.
should also add that.
Yeah, thanks for reading. Okay, Minister Arinel, going on what you said concerning Ms. Labega, is the minister, all right, are you happy with the fact that this is actually transpiring, letting the contract, run out and she being out of the job, or do you want her to stay on as a managing director of the airport?
Actually, based on the situation, Regina cannot stay on the post based on the reports from the VDSM, and everyone is aware of that, and she's aware of that as well. And for that reason, we chose to grant her her leave so she can sort out the situation and see what her future plans will be. So I'm the person that recommended that.
Okay. And Mr. Jacobs, NEPA, any update on that, where that is concerned? I know we've been going back and forth with that.
Thank you. Good morning to all, as this is the first time I'm speaking. Good morning to all viewers and listeners, and to my colleagues here in the Council of Ministers. Welcome to Minister Kiding-Dongo, and I wish you much success as you see how it goes here for the first time. And also to the media representatives here today. Yes, actually, I was just looking at my phone and saw that I just received the report from the inspection that I've been awaiting. I cannot divulge the information that I just read, of course. This information was due 2 days ago, but due to the lengthy meetings and the wealth of information that was divulged in those meetings, they have just today submitted that information to me. So, of course, I have to meet with my advisors and the legal advisors on the way forward based on the information that I have just received. So you will have to wait a bit longer, I'm afraid.
Okay. And you will be presenting the media law tomorrow in Parliament. Can you give us some highlights or what's going to be discussed? I don't know.
The request came from Parliament. I am not presenting the media law as such. This law, as I'm sure the media knows, is something that came up in 2010, a draft that has been reworked since, I believe, the Netherlands Antilles and presented by Omaira Leeflang at the time. And it was promptly after stakeholders meeting, etc., was held, put aside. So my ministry, which happens to be the one that has to take the lead on this, has not done anything further as to promote this law. It is not a priority at this time. But as I am invited to Parliament to have a discussion on it, I will find out what Parliament's intention is with it. And therefore, then the media, who is also invited to those meetings, will have the opportunity as well to find out, just like I will, what Parliament's intentions are as pertains to it. Because I was just invited, and it's a draft. It is not a law, and information will be presented. I actually had some meetings with the Department of Culture, which has the lead on this within the ministry. And so we'll be prepared for tomorrow's meeting, and present the information as it exists and to know, in fact, what the goal is in having it called at this time. So I am actually quite as interested as you to find out.
My last question concerning the fire department accreditation. Did you have any meeting yet with the minister, the prime minister, about it?
The Prime Minister arrived on Sunday evening, and as you know, yesterday we were quite busy with the swearing in of the new minister as well as our quarterly meeting with the governor, which took all day. So no, meetings have been held internally within the Council of Ministers or ministers individually, as far as I know, on any topics thus far.
Thank you.
Bibi, I'll allow one follow-up question before we close off.
Now you give me a kind of hip hop. Minister Arundel, as per Ms. Regina LaBega, prior to her being suspended and then now on leave of absence, she was working on a number of projects. Projects, I believe, to push the airport forward and to upgrade the airport. Are you, or do you believe PJIE is going to consider, or are you guys working on getting a consultancy agreement with Ms. LaBega so that when her contract expires in June, she comes back as a consultant to then start pushing those projects forward? I know.
Actually, the situation as it is now, Mr. Larry Dunker is the acting managing director of the operating company, and he's the one who's going to continue executing these projects, so there will be continuity. As for the Regina LaBega coming in as a consultant, that was discussed, yes, but it's not confirmed. That is something we are looking into to see if it's possible, yes or no. But her services, her expertise are required, as you said, is needed. And that's why we are looking into it, and we will see how the situation will materialize once her contract ends at the end of June. But we are in discussion with her, and it's been tough, but we hope to come to a conclusion.
A 7-year contract?
No, for sure not, no.
Minister Jacob has indicated she would like to make a further remark. Minister Jacob?
Thank you, Marcia. Last week in a press conference that I held, I gave erroneous information, so I wanted to correct that. I mentioned that the amount for the studying in the region was in euros, and it's actually guilders. So I wanted to clarify that it's 329,000 guilders, not euros. And also, I saw the media had printed that we were working on a drug policy, and that was a bit of a, I don't know, a paraphrase of what I'd said. So I would like to clarify that the ministry is working on a discipline policy, which includes drugs as well. So it's not a drug policy separate from the discipline policy. It's looking at discipline in its entirety, and it touches on many different areas. And at this point, we are looking to start an awareness campaign using the Division of Student Support Services, Youth Affairs, as well as Turning Point, who has been in contact with us to get information via the media, social media, as well as holding information sessions in schools so that parents and students are aware of some of the issues that our young people are dealing with and giving them the tools to deal with it in a positive manner. Thank you for the opportunity, Marcia.